So you're sitting at home watching TV when your mom calls to let you know that she's on her way over to pick up the cookies that you promised you'd make for her church's bake sale. You hang up the phone as you realize that you have completely forgotten to make these cookies. What are you going to do? It takes at least 10 minutes to bake cookies, not including the time it takes to mix the ingredients and preheat the oven. But what if I told you there's a cookie that didn't involve baking? What if it only took 5 minutes to make these cookies that you see right here? Well, today I'm going to share that recipe with you. I grew up eating no-bake cookies. My mom taught me how to make them, and she passed her recipe on to me. So I'm really excited that I get to share this recipe with you today. Before I show you how to make them, though, I'm going to share with you a couple of stories behind their different names. And then after we learn how to make these cookies, I'm going to give you a couple of ideas on how to change the recipe in case you know someone with a food allergy. So what are these cookies called and where did those names come from? Well, the first name is no-bake cookies. And according to Brown & Brown's Gems and Sweets website, no-bake cookies were first made in a time when common folk had to cook over an open flame. So one day, a peasant farmer came home from grinding oats, and he tripped over a rock and spilled some of the oats into his wife's chocolate candy that she was making over the fire. Now, instead of getting rid of that new mixture, she poured it onto the counter and made no-bake cookies. The second name is preacher cookies, and that name comes from the story that if a housewife was sitting at home and saw the preacher walking down the street, she would have enough time to go to her kitchen, make the cookies, and have them ready before he came for his visit. So, those are the two names. Now that you know those and their stories, it's time for you to learn how to make these cookies. And my recipe comes from this cookbook, The Random Acts of Cooking. So the first step is to gather your ingredients and set up your workstation. Now this recipe calls for 2 cups of sugar, 6 tablespoons of butter, 3 tablespoons of unsweetened cocoa powder, half a cup of milk, half a cup of peanut butter, a teaspoon of vanilla, and 3 cups of oats. Now I know that seems like a lot of ingredients, but don't worry, I have recipe cards for each of you to take home that list all the ingredients and the directions. So your first step is to measure your ingredients. You put the sugar, butter, cocoa powder, and milk into a saucepan on the stove. And then next to that you measure out your peanut butter, vanilla, and oatmeal because you'll add those in later. You also need to put a sheet of wax paper onto the counter, and that's where you'll be dropping your cookies by the spoonfuls once they're cooked. So now that we're all set up, we can begin the cooking process. You're supposed to turn your stove on to medium-high heat. And I interviewed my mom about making these cookies, and she said not to use too high of a heat because that will actually cause your sugar not to dissolve correctly, and then you'll end up with a crumbly cookie. So you're waiting for your mixture to come to this stage, which is called the full rolling boil, where you have bubbles all throughout the saucepan. Once you reach this stage, you set your timer for 1 minute and stir for that 1 minute. After the 1 minute, you remove the saucepan from the heat and stir in your peanut butter. Once that's melted in, then you add the vanilla and the oats. Another tip my mom gave me is to not add the vanilla before the peanut butter because the heat from the sugar mixture can burn off the vanilla flavor and you won't taste it anymore. So once your oats are all mixed together, you can begin dropping the cookies onto the wax paper. It's really important to move quickly during this stage because the mixture hardens as it cools. So you take a spoon, dip it into the pan, and drop your cookies onto the wax paper. Then you wait a couple minutes, and then you get to enjoy them. So now that you know how to make these cookies, I'd like to end with a few ideas about how to change the recipe if peanut butter can't be used. I found that a lot of home cooks and bloggers, such as Lynn from Lynn's Kitchen Adventures, just leave out the peanut butter. And instead, they use more butter in their recipe. Another blogger from the Six Sisters Steph uses Nutella, which contains hazelnuts instead of peanuts. So I thought those were both really good ideas, and so I've included those recipes on the back of your recipe card as well. So in conclusion, these cookies are easy, fast, and so delicious to make, and there's some interesting stories behind their different names. So I told you those stories, showed you how to make no-bake cookies, and gave you a couple of alternate recipes in the case of food allergies. So next time you need to whip up some amazing cookies, or you simply want an easy dessert after a hard day's work, I hope that you'll turn to these no-bake cookies. So please enjoy one on me, and don't forget to take your recipe card. Thank you.